Hello, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge, because life, well, just shouldn't be mediocre. I am Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by my good friend and co-host, Dr. Susan Nash. Hi, Susan. How are you today?
Good, and we have a first today. This is time we've had a guest who has an organic farm
Nice.
as well.
That sounds very good. And in the studio, we've got Harold Moon. He is Paul Anthony Thomas. Here we go.
This show is sponsored by Relay Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks.
And we are back, and in that center position of power, as we like to call it, we've got Paul joining us. And Susan, would you like to do the honor?
Sure. Paul Anthony Thomas is an entrepreneur who's been busy with operating oil wells and doing different kinds of activities. But he has two things that are really interesting that we really want to talk to him about. And one is his organic farm and what that's like in Abilene, Texas. And then the other is opportunities during COVID. So anyway, welcome.
Hi, how are you today?
Good.
We're all doing great here. And now that's an interesting story. You started out in oil and you wind up partially, you're still a little bit involved in oil from what I gathered from reading your bio as far as equipment and other things. But you went into organic farming, which is pretty interesting. What got you into that?
Well, in the 1990s, I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency, and
Okay.
I worked on the pesticide program. And if you see how commercial pesticides are applied, you would never want to eat anything out of the grocery store again.
That is true. That's interesting. So what kind of items do you grow? What kind of things do you grow?
Well, we grow food for the local market. We actually give a lot of our food and sell a lot of our food to the food bank and to we have a Meals on Wheels platform that we have here in town. And we give a lot of food to that, but we have some African farmers that actually help us on the farm, and they grow the crops, and I manage the finances. So.
Interesting. That's really cool. They work locally where you are, or they're actually in Africa?
No, they are here. They're refugees from Africa.
Okay.
They're actually from the Congo, and
Yes.
they like to farm, so they're here growing vegetables, and we have a big refugee community here in town, and they grow food for their community.
That's awesome. That's pretty good. And congratulations on the service that you provide for people. So, you're kind of one of those unsung heroes people don't think about, but that's really nice what you do. It's a wonderful service to help those who frankly need it.
Yeah, it's amazing
So do they
that
ever
one in
cook
five.
the food?
I'm
Say
sorry,
that
Paul?
again.
Oh, sorry. There's a little bit of a delay. Do the African farmers from the Congo ever prepare their native dishes so you can try out the recipes?
Yes, frequently, and the dishes are delicious. Actually, we get to go to their weddings. Their weddings last most of the day, and they all bring food. They don't have them catered. All the families bring food to the weddings, and they use our vegetables in their food preparation, and it's wonderful what they do. Yeah, the food's delicious.
That's great. So for those who don't know, because there's a lot of myths and there's a lot of talk about organic farming, what it is, what it isn't. And a lot of the different states, I guess, have different requirements as to what makes organic or what kinds of pesticides are used in some organics. They do use some things depending where they are. What exactly constitutes organic farming?
Well, actually, there are federal rules that have come down for organic farming, and then the states are are given funds to actually implement those rules. So we go by the federal rules, and most of the rules are kind of universal across the states. You have to test your water. You have to notify your neighbors. You have to test your soils and they have to lie fallow for 3 years before you can
Interesting.
actually farm organically on them. Right, and you can't use any kind of commercial pesticides. We use natural pesticides and natural fertilizers. Like we use bat guano, and we use a lot of cow manure, and we use some chicken scratch, and we feed our chickens organically with organic feeds, and we let the pigs roam on the garden in the wintertime and that kind of thing. So, and goats, we use the goats to clean our garden in the wintertime.
That's great. I love it. I love to hear that. It just sounds great.
Yeah. So where do you find the bat guano?
We have bat caves down near Austin, and they've harvested and sell it, and we buy it from them. They put it in 20-pound bags, and we buy it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's extremely hot. You have to mix it with you can only mix it about 5% with soil, and then use that as the fertilizer. You can't put it directly on the plants. Yeah.
Does it have a lot of phosphate, or what is it? Or
It does. It's very high in phosphates and it smells like ammonia if you pull it out of the bag. Yeah, it has a lot of nitrogen in it. It's extremely hot. It's just like chicken scratch, except chicken's about half as hot as bat guano. So,
that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's got a tremendous amount of nitrogen in it. So.
We used to have bats in our under the rafters, and Vermont in the summer we had parents had a summer place, and my sister always wanted to use it. She wanted the upstairs bedroom, but I did not want her there. So I told her all about the bats that lived up there. They really did. They didn't get into the bedroom, but I wonder how much guano is up there.
A lot. They produce a lot. Yes, a whole lot.
Now, you're still also involved in the oil industry, kind of indirectly. If I recall correctly, you're selling equipment or taking salvaged equipment, something of that sort?
Actually, we study the oil and gas auctions that are happening now. In January of this year, January 2020, there was one auction a month, and now there's probably 2 a week. Because the price of oil fell into negative territory in early March, and that's caused a lot of oil companies to shut in production, and many of them to go out of business, and we're going to have a lot more go out of business. But a lot of the service companies are filing bankruptcy now, and they're having to put their equipment up for auction, and we buy the equipment that we can take to other industries, and we like skid steers and telehandlers and things like that, and we'll buy that equipment in Texas and distribute it throughout the U.S. and resell it. So
that's good. Do you have to do anything to the equipment, modify it, or do the people who buy it modify it?
Oh, it's normally just straight skid steer with a bucket on it. It's just a straight piece of equipment. We don't do any modifications. Yeah,
that's great.
I think that's
it's exciting. Exciting market. Say it again, Susan.
Yeah, so I think that's a smart plan. You had mentioned earlier that instead of getting a specialized equipment, you're getting equipment that is just basically straight type of trucks and trailers, things like that, and then that they can be modified. Yeah,
that's right. So we buy flatbed trailers and step deck trailers and tandem 16-foot trailers, and then we buy pickups. We usually can buy and sell pickups and make 30 or 40% on our money. So we're pleased with that return in a year. Yeah. So.
That's smart. It's a really good way to put something to use that nobody can use anymore. So that's great.
Yeah, this is the 4th recession we've been through in my career. And this is what you do when a recession happens. If you want to make money during a recession. So.
Oh, I believe it. I remember back in the mid 80s how bad Texas got it. It was bad, like 87, 88, something like that. Here in California, we were getting a ton of Texans moving here, and now we're getting lots of Californians moving anywhere but here. So there's a constant migration going on in the country. But back then, I remember that was a really bad recession, and the oil industry got wiped at that time. We were getting a lot of people from Dallas, Houston, and I guess that's happening again. We haven't seen a migration here, though. I don't know if people are leaving Texas or just staying around, but we're not seeing at least a migration in California, because California has also got a problem with like everybody else. Our economy is not the best right now, so it's an interesting world we're living in.
The Texas economy down along the Gulf Coast is one of the strongest economies in the U.S. because crude oil prices are low, and the refiners can make a lot of money when crude oil prices are low.
Right.
So the reason people are not moving to California is because it's very expensive to live in California.
Oh, that is true.
They don't want to move from a cheap Texas environment to an expensive California
it
environment.
Costs 3 times more. I mean, the average single home price in Southern California, where we are, is probably about $600,000, and that's for a single family home. Nothing super fancy, and that's insane. And there's no sign of it going down, even with all the stuff going on. So, let's just see what happens.
The average home price here is about $165,000, and that's for a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. Yeah.
Yep, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cheap to live in Texas compared to other places. Very cheap.
Yeah. Except, I guess, if you live in Austin. I heard Austin's expensive.
It's gotten more expensive. Yes, it's gotten more expensive.
The Californians live there.
You don't move to Austin. That's right.
No, I think all the Californians moved there. I think they're causing grief. But anyway, Susan?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about comparative. Well, I mean, that's its own opportunities too. Like, for example, in Oklahoma, where I am, the real estate prices aren't that low, and I don't know why. But it depends on where you are. In Norman, where I am, they're much more expensive than what you're describing. But I just think that point where things are changing so dramatically and potentially permanently, because, for example, housing, one of the reasons why residential housing is going up is because people are considering that they are going to have to work and live there, and they're making their rooms soundproof and all sorts of things.
Right, a lot of renovations going on, a lot of updating, a lot of upgrading. Lowe's and Home Depot have gone through the roof in this part of the world. Yeah, their sales have gone up dramatically, actually, as much as 40% in some areas.
Now, Paul, before you work, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Susan.
So, thanks. Sorry, there's a delay thing. But in terms of, for example, your operations, like you operate oil and gas wells, and you had mentioned at one point that you were looking for energy and bidding on solar farms that would go in conjunction with the oil to, I guess, run some of the equipment. Do you see operations changing? Are people working remotely at home, or are they still going out to offices and to the wells?
In certain parts of Texas, a lot of the office buildings are closed down, and totally nobody's in the office buildings. In a lot of places, I have a friend that manages a dozen office buildings in Dallas, and all of her office buildings are closed. Everybody's still at home.
Wow.
Yeah. So in our rural area of Texas, I live in Abilene in the eastern shelf of the Permian Basin, and we go to work every day. But in Dallas, they don't do that. And in Houston, they don't do that. There's a lot of places in Houston that are still closed. Yeah. So this pandemic has changed our world dramatically, and people won't realize that for another 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And like, so sorry, you're still working on acquiring oil and gas properties too, right?
That's correct. We put out 2 bids last week, and we put out about 8 bids last month. Yes. Yeah. We put out about 2 bids a week.
Now, what would you do with the oil and gas properties if you bought them? Would you keep them as oil and gas properties or convert them to something else like organic farming?
No, we just buy the leases on the oil and
Oh,
gas
the
minerals
leases.
that are produced. So
Okay.
we buy oil and gas production. Yeah.
Got it.
So it's only good for oil and gas production. Is all it's good for
Got it. Okay.
us. We don't own the surface. So
Oh, interesting.
So don't you think it's a little bit like getting a rabid skunk or a pet?
getting a what? Say that again.
A rabbit skunk.
Isn't it a little bit like getting a rabid skunk as a pet?
For
to
what?
buy oil and leases to buy oil and gas leases right now. People are predicting that.
Yeah, you could look at it that way, but we think oil's still here for another 20 to 30 years. I mean, we've got some time left on it. It's good. The amount of money it's going to take to switch over into renewables is more than anybody can invest in the next 10 years. So it's going to take a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking because people act like that right now, and they don't really take into consideration that you cannot just switch over instantly.
That's right. Yeah. So our projection after studying the marketplace, our projection is that oil and gas will be in 2070. Oil and gas will be 5% of the energy market, and the rest will be renewables. It'll be, and by then nuclear will have its place, and solar and wind will be kind of a minor player, but solar is going to be the major player. We're going to start harvesting the sun more, but it's going to take us 50 years to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it seems to move fast, it's moved. It's gone from 3% to 9% in the last 5 years. It's still going to be, there's still a lot to overcome in the marketplace. People don't realize how entrenched oil and gas is and how much our world depends on oil and gas and that type of energy production. So I think we'll move more into natural gas come another 10 years, but it's still going to be there. It's still going to be hydrocarbons.
Well, I know in California, we were talking recently about, in Northern California in particular, they started moving to the renewables, but they didn't do it very smartly. And as a result, people are having rolling blackouts all the time. They don't have enough power. They have too many people still live there, and they didn't put in quite enough solar, quite enough windmills, quite enough of whatever else they were doing. And they're considering, what do we do next? How do we make up for it? I don't know what California is going to do as far as intelligent planning. They don't do things very smartly here all the time, but it's sort of interesting. So at present, the talk in California, at least in Northern Cal, is that solar is going to take a long time. Like you said, it's still not there, but if they ever get it there, that'll be a big boon. But I don't know how long it's going to take. Maybe 20 years over here, maybe more, because again, they have fairly thick populations, and in Southern California, it's a much higher population. We're about 2/3 of the population of the state. So we've got over 20, 25 million people just in the southern area. And there are solar farms. There's a lot of solar in houses, but nowhere near what it could be. Though they're trying to make big pushes in the housing markets to get more solar in. And our neighbor has solar, for example. They got in, and they actually got it put in for free, and it works well. But they don't always run those programs. But it's something that's definitely up and coming. Is that the kind of solar that you're seeing, whether it's more for homes, or are we talking more large scale solar?
Well, we're building we're not doing it, but they are building $2 billion solar farms within miles of my house right now. But the rooftop solar is probably the wave of the future, but it's really not going to go anywhere until they get the battery technology sorted out, until they get lithium battery technology. And the next phase of batteries that they're talking about are glass batteries. Once they get the glass battery technology, which is 15 years in the future, once they get that lined out, that's going to change the entire world of solar and renewable energy. But it's going to take 10 or 15 years to get us there.
Yeah. What exactly? I haven't read much about the gas one. Glass one. What is the glass battery?
Well, I really can't describe it. It's a technology similar to the lithium battery. They use silicone as a medium to store the energy. So it's it's kind of Dick Tracy kind of stuff in the
Yeah.
future, but that's what they're talking about. I really don't know very much about the technology because it's
Yeah,
not
that sounds
very
interesting.
refined.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah,
reading more
so
about
we're going.
carbon. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on trying to work on trying to mine and process lithium in North America. Right now, there is no lithium processing
Mm-hmm.
in North America, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal for the U.S. as far as national security and battery
Mm-hmm.
technology. And
Yep.
so we're working with senators and stuff to try to get that the government behind that processing plant and trying to get a processing plant built out in West Texas or New Mexico somewhere.
That'd be great.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, because they have the lithium brines in Nevada, and then there's also there's Oro Veda has a lithium discovery and mine, and there's a lot of lithium, but it's just a matter of the concentration, and so being able to process
Right.
it.
There are a lot of hard rock lithium mines in North America that are not being used right now to speak of. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources. We just have to be smart about how we put them together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
What's crazy is that we're shipping all of our lithium either to Mexico, the coast of Mexico, or we're shipping it to China to be processed, and that's really kind of very much of a waste of resources.
Yep.
That makes no sense.
It does. It's terrible, actually.
Yep. Well, Susan, we are almost out of time. We started late today, unfortunately, but we have kind of a cutoff we have to do. Do you want to ask our typical Life Edge question?
Sure. Okay, so our question is, in life, what is it that you think has given you your edge?
Made you successful, made you who you are.
My mentors have given me my success. My father was my mentor. My father bought his first public stock in 1926 and started studying investments when he was a child, and started in the oil and gas business in the 30s. And I just I could have never replaced that type of experience to learn from. You learn from somebody with that much experience. It gives you a jump start on everybody else. So
yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Anyway, Paul, we appreciate you coming on, sharing some of what you're doing, and kind of giving us ideas of where things are going and what your kind of view of the future is, which is interesting. We've never had an organic farmer on before, so that also was very interesting. Because we hear a lot about organic farming, and I've got a friend who used to be in charge of Organic Farming Council in Sacramento, and he was telling me some of the stuff that goes on, but it's a great thing, and all the other things you're doing sound wonderful. Plus, you enjoy good food out there, so hey, kudos to you. A pleasure meeting you, and it's been a pleasure meeting you, and we wish you great success in the future and continued success. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
And if you're watching the show and you have any questions, please put them in the notes below. We'll also have a link to what Paul does. So if you want to take a look at any of those links, you can. And we'll see you next week on Life Edge. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.